The bombardment had stopped 3 hours ago. Sergeant Dara Osai knew better than to trust the silence. Silence on Varath 4 meant one of two things. The Krethani had pulled back, or they were repositioning for something worse. She kept her rifle up and moved low through the collapsed corridor, her boots crunching over shattered glass and carbonized polymer. The forward operating base had been overrun before dawn. Half her squad was dead. The other half was scattered across 6 kilometers of hostile terrain, falling back to the extraction point without her because she'd heard something that didn't sound like rubble settling. She heard it again. A thin, high sound, not mechanical, not structural. A child. Dara found the small figure wedged beneath a collapsed load-bearing wall in what had once been a civilian processing center. The child was Varathi, one of the native species, no older than 4 or 5 by their developmental standards. Large amber eyes, skin the pale gray-green of new moss, 4-fingered hands clutching a piece of torn fabric to its chest. One of the child's legs was pinned under a slab of ferrocrete. It looked at Dara and made no sound. That was the first thing that broke her. The silence. The absolute animal stillness of a small creature that had already learned that making noise brought danger. "Hey," Dara dropped to one knee, kept her voice low. "Hey, little one, I'm not going to hurt you." The amber eyes tracked her. They were extraordinary eyes, faceted slightly at the edges, built to detect motion in low light. Right now they were full of a fear so complete it had burned past panic into something quiet and enduring. Dara slung her rifle behind her back and held up both empty hands. "I'm going to move this piece of wall," she said. "It's going to make noise, that's okay. That's just the wall, not the bad guys." She didn't know if the child understood standard. Probably not. But tone crossed species lines. She'd learned that in 3 years of conflict zone deployments. She kept her voice low, steady, the same register she used with her sister's dog during thunderstorms. She talked while she worked, narrating nothing in particular, just keeping sound moving between them, a thread of continuity. The ferrocrete slab weighed close to 200 kilograms. Dara's exo-assist was damaged, the left actuator seizing intermittently, but she got her shoulder under the edge and pushed. The slab shifted again, came free with a grinding crack, and she held it long enough for the child to pull the trapped leg loose. The limb was broken. Clean fracture, she thought, but she wasn't a medic. The child looked at the leg, then looked at her. Then it reached out and put one 4-fingered hand flat against her cheek. Dara went completely still. She had read the cultural briefings. Varathi touch communication was layered, nuanced, and deeply personal. What a Varathi child offered via deliberate facial contact was, she had to drag the word up from the briefing's footnotes, haven claim asterisk, a declaration of shelter seeking, an instinctive, irrevocable bond gesture. Young Varathi made it only when they had decided on some deep prelinguistic level that a specific being was safe. They almost never made it to non-Varathi. "Oh," Dara said softly. The child made a sound for the first time. Not words. Just a low, continuous hum, almost subsonic, felt more in the chest than heard with the ears. Her name, as best Dara could render it, was Sitha. Corporal Wen Jiahao found them 40 minutes later, following Dara's emergency beacon through 2 blocks of shattered commercial district. He came around a corner with his weapon up, saw Dara sitting against a cracked wall with a Varathi child asleep against her chest, and stopped dead. "Sergeant." "Corporal." "That is a child." "Yes, it is." Wen lowered his weapon slowly. He was 22, 3 years younger than Dara, and he had the particular expression he always wore when events exceeded his training, a very controlled, very careful blankness that meant he was recalibrating. "We have to move. Extraction window is 4 hours. "I know." "The child comes with us." Wen looked at the child. He looked at Dara. He opened his mouth, closed it, and then crossed the distance between them and crouched down to examine Sitha's broken leg with the same careful attention he gave to damaged equipment. Needs a splint. I've got 2 quick-chem rods in my kit. He was already pulling them out. Leg's a different bone structure than ours. I'll have to improvise. Dara watched him work. Wen's hands were precise and unhurried. He talked while he did it, quietly, in Mandarin, a soft, continuous stream that she didn't understand but that Sitha apparently found acceptable, because the child didn't wake and didn't flinch. When he was done, he sat back on his heels and looked at Dara. She made the Haven claim, Dara said. Wen absorbed this. I read the briefings. Then you know I can't put her down. I know, he paused. I mean that literally. You can't put her down until she releases. If you break a Haven claim before the child releases it, the psychological damage is. I know what it is, Wen. He nodded, looked at Sitha. Something moved behind his carefully neutral expression. She's maybe 4. Yeah. In the middle of a war zone. Yeah. Okay, he stood up and reordered his kit with quick, efficient movements. Okay, how do you want to do this? That was Wen. That had always been Wen. Skip the grief, find the problem, solve it. She'd seen him cry exactly once over a fallen squadmate, and it had lasted 45 seconds before he had dried his face and picked up a shovel and started digging. She didn't know if it was training or temperament. She suspected both. They moved at night. Dara carried Sitha against her left side, the child's uninjured leg hooked over her forearm, her small face pressed into the curve of Dara's neck. The broken leg was splinted and still. Every few minutes Sitha would make that low, subsonic hum, almost like a purr but deeper, a sound that Dara felt vibrate through her collarbone. Wen took point. He moved like water finding its level, and he was very good at finding cover. 3 times Krethani patrol drones swept the area. Each time, Dara flattened against rubble or ducked into shadow and pressed her hand over Sitha's face. Not hard, just present, a signal. Each time, Sitha went silent and still without being told, those enormous amber eyes open in the dark, processing. She was terrifyingly obedient for a 4-year-old. Dara had nieces and nephews. She knew what 4-year-olds were. The silence in this child was not the silence of a calm child. It was the silence of a child who had been taught by circumstance that survival required it. Not anymore, Dara thought. Not after tonight. The second time a drone passed. Wen doubled back and crouched beside them in the shadow of a collapsed archway. He looked at Sitha in the dark. Sitha looked at him. Slowly, with the particular gravity of a very young being making a very considered decision, she reached out and touched the back of his hand with 2 fingers. Wen looked at Dara. Secondary Haven claim, Dara said, means she's expanding her shelter group. Wen stared at the 2 fingers resting on his hand. He was quiet for a long time. Okay, he said finally, his voice very careful. Okay. He turned his hand over, palm up, and let Sitha's small fingers rest in it. Okay. The extraction point was a shelled-out agricultural depot 2 kilometers from the northern perimeter. The shuttle was already there when they arrived, Lieutenant Hara Mitsuki standing outside with her arms crossed, and the specific expression of someone who has rehearsed a very firm speech and is about to deliver it. She looked at Dara. She looked at the child, she looked at Wen, she looked at the child again. Before you say anything, Dara began. I'm not going to say anything, Mitsuki said. She walked forward, examined Sitha's splinted leg, checked the child's pupils with a penlight and pressed careful fingertips to the small gray-green throat to count the pulse. Tachycardic but stable. We'll get her to medical. She looked at Dara. Haven claim. Yes, ma'am. Mitsuki nodded once, the way she nodded when a mission report confirmed what she had already calculated. Then you'll both be in the same bay. She turned toward the shuttle. Move. We're 2 minutes from window. Dara followed. Sitha's hand was pressed flat against her cheek again, not clutching, not desperate, just resting there, certain. In the amber eyes something had shifted. Not the fear that would take time, maybe a long time, but something alongside the fear, something that hadn't been there in the rubble under the collapsed wall. A beginning, the first cellular edge of trust. Dara pressed her cheek gently into the child's palm. I've got you, asterisk, she thought. I've got you now. The shuttle lifted into the dark Varath 4 sky, and the three of them rose together.